Greetings, it's Adam with the Rata Non Grata, and not with my better microphone right now, nor my working camera, so just doing this through my phone. But yeah, Atari is continuing to make moves under CEO Wade Rosen, and what's interesting is that over the past several years, maybe decade or so, Atari had been kind of unloading a lot of IP so that they could kind of stay afloat. They didn't really have anybody hired for them, like programmers, to actually make much out of what they were doing. They were more just a publisher anyways. And so they unloaded a lot of IP, sold it off, and now they're getting back into acquiring IP. And so there was recent news about them obtaining Stern Electronics and all the games that came from that, including Berserk and Frenzy. And there was a press release, as you can see here, that was sent out today, saying that they have now acquired more than 100 PC and console titles from the 80s and 90s. Now, unfortunately, once again, the PR does not include a full list of what it is that is included. It just mentions that it has Bubsy, Hardball, Demolition Racer, 1942 Pacific Air War, F-117A, and F-14 Air Combat Series. Atari will seek to expand digital and physical distribution of the classic titles, creating new games based on the IP and explore brand and merchandising collaborations. And it mentions that these are all titles that come from Accolade, Infogrames, and Microprose. And I guess it's kind of amusing in a way that Infogrames is mentioned because the company that is Atari right now is Infogrames, or was, and until they changed their name. But again, they did sell off a lot of their IP, including the Alone in the Dark series, the Battle Zone, and all that. And so I wonder if they're going to be picking that up. But from one side, I'm sort of interested in this on the arcade coin-op side of things. Microprose did, well, they were mainly known for PC games, but they also did release some arcade titles. But Atari, it mentions that Atari acquired the trademark to the Accolade and GTI brands, and they are eventually known as Infogrames North America. And so, yeah, this really brings up their IP catalog. I guess Wade really had heard some of the criticism out there that Atari's IP catalog had become fairly weak. And so just to give you an idea, I'm using Wikipedia here. Sorry about that. I know it's not really the most reliable set of sources, but it's good for quick reference. This list of Accolade games, and some of them did appear on the Atari 8-bit consoles, Atari ST, Atari 7800, such as Fight Night. That's one that I remember playing a bit, although I only played the Atari 8-bit version. And I think I have the Atari 7800 version around here somewhere, at least not on the cartridge, just on SD card. But Mean 18 Golf, that's generally considered to be a pretty good 7800 title. I've never played it on the Amiga or Atari ST. Ace of Aces, I've always heard a lot about from the Atari 7800 side. And interesting that there's a few Atari ST ports on here. Perhaps at some point they could do an Atari ST DLC for the Atari 50th anniversary because, well, that was not represented on that compilation, and that's because the only IP that Atari had anything to was crap, and so they wouldn't want to put that on there. But Test Drive is back under Atari's purview. It used to be, and I can't remember who they sold it to some years ago, but you might recall in some more recent times, I think on the Xbox 360 there was a Test Drive series of games, and so yeah, that's back to them. It'd be interesting to see what they might do, if anything, with the Amiga and Atari ST versions. Although I don't know if those are any good. Ishido Way of the Stones, that is one that could show up on the Atari Lynx, although I never really played it much on the Lynx. I prefer the, there's another one, a Mahjong on there. Now, Star Control, that's a name that you might recognize, or even more so, Turrican. And so the Metroid-like game. And see, more Hardball, more Star Control, Bubsy, of course. And going to the inaccuracy of this overall list, it does not mention the Atari Jaguar part of Bubsy. Not that that really matters. I mean, Bubsy was always kind of a meh one, but it's another character that now Atari can use in their battle for relevancy again. Barkley Shut Up and Jam was developed for the Atari Jaguar and never released, but was released to the Genesis and SNES. And same thing with Brett Hull Hockey. And so I think that there's a copy of that on the Atari Jaguar CD floating around there somewhere. Remember hearing about PO'd, but I've never played it. And more test drive games, at least up to the 2000s. So yeah, that's all under Atari's wheelhouse now, and plus some others, Microprose as well. They did some early 3D games, particularly for the Amiga and Atari ST computers. And so, yeah, it should be kind of cool, hopefully, to see what they're going to do with all this. I mean, they've brought on a lot of stuff, so it's a little bit surprising because their most recent financial report reported a giant loss on Atari's end, and so they were not doing too hot. So I'm not sure where they've been able to find all this money to acquire all these IPs, but they might be cheap, a bit forgotten, laid to the side there. But what would you like to see out of any of these games? Which of these games would you like to see remade, if any, or new takes on them? I'm sure they could do some cool stuff with Turrican. I wonder if they would ever attempt to do a Turrican Prime thing, like a first-person version like Nintendo did with Metroid. But let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll see you around.